Hello, hello. We're going to do a quick tour of the factory here. It is very spaghetti, very messy, but I think it'll be fun to do a little checkup every once in a while to see where it's at. So, just ignore the mess. Ignore the mess. Let me try to break this down from where it all started, which was actually autosave. It was actually right around here. There's some weirdness going on. What you see here, the combinators are just for labeling. They don't actually do anything. But my initial ore patch that I started with was a mix of iron, copper, and stone. It was terrible. So I had this like sorting thing where copper went down onto this bottom lane, iron went to the middle lane, and stone went to the upper lane. There used to be miners here, and like some of these extra lines were routed between them, but all the ore, all the resources are now gone, so I'm slowly phasing this out and bringing in trains, as we can see here. So these initial lines of the resources were being, belted here into some smelters, which I'm also phasing out. Although you can see the copper's doing stuff here, but it's also doing stuff elsewhere. We're smelting copper somewhere else. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we had our three main smelting operations here with the copper, the iron, and the stone, making our stone bricks. Bricks are then being, well, actually, first we have some iron being routed up here to steel. We have some stone being crushed into sand, which is being made into glass. And then finally, some of those bricks are being made into stone tablets. With space exploration, you need stone tablets to make circuits. So very important, very, very important. They're going off up here. They're doing all kinds of spaghetti. So I treat it a little bit like a main bus where we have our copper bus coming out here, and we have the iron bus, sort of, because it goes out this way. And at a point, I was getting near the shoreline here, and I'd also built some stuff in the way, so I ended up routing it down this way, and now it's getting bad. Same kind of thing was going on with copper, where, I've kind of ended it here, but if I'm going to do anything else with it, I've got to reroute it for sure. And same with the stone bricks here. They come out, they get treated a bit like a main bus, just continuing on this same route. But the spaghetti gets worse and worse, and they kind of stop here. And then, it's really hard to actually break down a full flow through this thing. Like down here, we're making yellow inserters, which are partially being used for the green science, but they're also being fed down here to make better inserters, the fast inserters, the long inserters, smart, or stack filter and stack filter. Similarly, we're making the yellow belts here, and those are all being fed down here to make red belts. And I also have mini loaders. These are clearly not enough gear wheels to keep up with this demand, but whatever, right? So yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of a mall where I'm also doing all my combinators and my green and red cables, as well as my rail signals, both kinds. Green science gets piped over here to my very meager lab setup. I've been turtling a lot in this space exploration game. And we're also just making a little bit of red science down here locally, very basic, not much exciting about that. A couple engines, the single cylinder and the a small electric motor, just so I can grab those if I want to handcraft a bunch of stuff. And yeah, like I said, it's a lot of spaghetti, so it's really hard to kind of follow everything. We've got our all of our electric poles here that I care about. I'm not even storing the small ones because those are trash, but the small ones are needed to make medium, and then we're making big electric poles and substations. Those iron sticks feed into that. This contraption feeds our what are they called? Big electric motors, which I did ratio out with Hellmod to supply enough to make this many flying robot frames, because I like my robots. We've got some meteor defense installations over here. We've got our... Well, we'll get to that in a second. Let's see. Let's come back up. Where do I want to go? This is a coal patch that's running pretty dry now. There's still a decent amount, but yeah, let's branch into oil. So it took me a while to find my first oil, which is way up here. Let's take a look at that on the map. Way up here. And I piped that down, so we'll follow that logic now. Pipe that down and down and down and down. And here is where I'm doing my oil cracking. So this is all advanced, so we're making the heavy and light oils here. I've got some logic. Basically, if we have less than 20k, I send out a signal saying, hey, crack all the oil. We don't want heavy, we don't want light, just crack everything. And then if either heavy or light gets above, I think 120k, I also say crack that. So basically, if we have more than 120k heavy oil, which right now we have 119, but if we have more than 120k across all these tanks, crack this down into light oil, and same thing, if we have more than 120k light oil, crack it down into petroleum. But again, this is like the emergency override, where if we have less than 20k petroleum, emergency, start cracking all those other oils, because we need petroleum for things like now, right? So anyway, we're also making our lubricant, which is used, it's going to be used for blue belts, which I'm not making, but it's being used right now for the big electric motors. Now we take the petroleum gas, and we're making sulfur, we're making plastics, and we're making sulfuric acid. Really, this doesn't use the actual petroleum gas, but it uses the sulfur from that. So now the acid is being used to make, right here, it's being used for this very terrible blue circuit thing that I just put stuff in when I need them. I know, it's terrible. And it's also being used up here for the uranium mining, which I'm not doing a whole lot with. We have this kind of nuclear setup that I never finished. It was there for an emergency during a coronal mass ejection. And I really should finish it at some point, but right now we're just taking, we're just processing the uranium. We've got 271 of the good stuff and 35k of the bad stuff. Was this 230? Yeah, 238. 235 is the good stuff. We got a random mine up there. That's not super important. So that's the basics of the oil processing, and a lot of those plastics and stuff and the sulfur get fed into other things. So, I mean, I'm not going to break down every individual belt here because it's a little bit too much going on. We have some concrete here that gets put together via spaghetti from everything else. Here is the setup for the gray science, which is like a little messy, but gray is military. We're making our walls here. We're making our regular ammo. We're making grenades. And those all get brought up this way. And we're making the piercing rounds right here. So we're just belting that regular ammo up here. We're combining them all to make our gray science. Some of this other stuff down here, like these multi-cylinder engines, are being belted up here as part of the blue science, along with some sulfur and some red circuits that I'm making right here on site. I've typically been doing circuits on site this run, which is not my normal way of doing things. I usually put them on a main bus, but this just turned into massive spaghetti because of the differences in space exploration's recipes. Here we have some solar panels. I mean, I think I was going to comment on this earlier, but that's right, the sulfuric acid's also being used for batteries, of course, which those are being used for both the flying robot frames and the accumulators right there. So back over this way now, we have heat shieldings, we have low density structures, we have another thing that I'm doing. If I get above a certain point of petroleum gas, we crack it. Similarly, I forget exactly what the conditions are for cracking the light and heavy oil, or not cracking, but converting them in, I said cracking, I meant converting them into solid fuel. I forget what all the conditions are in these. It's not important right now, but we're making a lot of solid fuel. And then we have one guy over here making rocket fuel. So just in general, we've got everything piping down to make the rockets. I always like to say piping. It should be belting. The one I haven't touched on is rocket control units, which are somewhere over here. It is a terrible mess. It is terrible spaghetti. Where in the world are they? I gotta follow this. Oh, they're right here, duh. So yeah, piping in some, was it glass? Yeah, that's glass, red circuits, batteries, and iron plates. And we're getting out the rocket control units. I don't have satellites automated, so my rocket's just kind of sitting here right now until I manually put a satellite in and launch it. Over here, we're doing the space, what do they call it? Rocket science, which needs the satellite telemetry that you get from launching a rocket, which is this empty belt that comes in. But other than that, we're making the electric furnaces and the speed modules right here. Our two speed modules are one thing of electric furnaces, which is very nice. It's all backed up for my smelting arrays. And just to supply that, I'm making the stone furnaces and stuff right here. Let's see. So yeah, that powers this. I've got 51,000 stacks of rails right here. Or, not stacks. 512 stacks. It says 51,000 rails. Am I bad at math? I would think that would be 52,000. Maybe it's a rounding issue. I don't know. But I've got a lot of rails here that I'm just making and storing. That way, when I build out rail networks and stuff, I know I've got them. I hate waiting on things, right? So, that's the general rundown of like the main factory area. There's probably a couple other things I could touch on here, but that's the general thing. We also have these steam engines that I don't really use much anymore. They are technically running right now, but I mean, it's generating 200 watts. It's running at like bare minimum. Like this fuel is basically not even doing anything. But they're there for emergency, for backup or whatever, if my power becomes an issue. But in general, it's not, because I've got a lot of solar arrays. Right now, you can see the accumulators are running. If we look over the last 10 minutes, yeah, it doesn't look like steam power. It's not even doing anything. I actually have the steam power, I should have mentioned, the only reason they're actually running is because of the inserters. I believe that's what they're doing, because it's actually an isolated network. Yeah, and the pumps. So that's actually the reason it's running, because I have it on a power switch based on the accumulator charge. If it gets below 40%, then this will come on as a backup. So it rarely does anything. But yeah, I've got these huge solar arrays. What is it? 5,200. I think exactly 5,200 solar panels, because I counted up the blueprint. And I don't know the exact number of accumulators, because it's a little hard to count the blueprint because it tiles. So the edges here overlap, so there's math involved in that. And I didn't have a lot of room to lay them out in a nice grid, so they're all in these weird shapes. So figuring out the overlaps is gross. I don't want to do it. So I've got decent solar power there. The last main area I want to touch on here is the secondary smelting operation. As the main area started getting a little bit too congested, I wanted to upgrade the smelting operation a little bit. There's a reason, I'll get to this in a minute, that this is still using crappy steel furnaces. There's a reason. But I had found a good iron deposit over here as my main one was running out. Yeah, that's a really long belt because I did not have trains running. But I found this iron deposit, and I just belted it over here, made like an emergency smelting operation, and used this to supplement what was going on down here, which you can see they feed in to where we were actually smelting the iron ore down here and making the plates. So it supplements that, but there's also some branching going on up here where we use this to make some steel, and we're using some of this iron up here for different things that we're doing, like those iron sticks and wherever this goes, because it was easier than taking off of that crappy main bus setup that I have down there, that pseudo main bus setup. It was less spaghetti, but still very spaghetti. Similarly, I did that with copper and steel. Just, hey, let's get some extra stuff going up here to supplement, because this old setup down here, wherever it's at, this old setup down here can no longer keep up with what I need, right? So part of the reason why these are still using steel furnaces is because, I mean, even some of this, because all I was doing when I got this set up, I put in some modules and I was like, hey, I need you to go as fast as you can, just get something going. But it's not really intended to be permanent, right? So that was kind of my intention from the start. And I never felt the need to upgrade the copper ones because, like, my plan is to tear all of this down, right? So the way to tear it all down is with smelting arrays, but smelting arrays need a rail network, right? So if we're going to do a rail network, well, that takes a lot of work. First of all, we have some landfill down here, which is helpful no matter what you're doing, but you run across that water boundary and you just can't quite do what you need to do. It's good to have a lot of landfill on hand. And most of my rail blueprints are set up to work with landfill, so I can just go right over water. So how does my rail network work? We have a depot here. Some of these are still not operational, but they will be kicked off next time I have a proper session. Right now, all we're really doing is stone and iron ore. Those are both operational, but copper could be operational now. It's just not. Same with like the iron plates and stuff. We have our depot here, and this is like our train output into the main factory. So we have our stone output here. This is going to be iron plates, probably. This is going to be copper plates. We'll probably do steel right here. Basically, I stack these, and I bring these out and feed them in to the lines that we currently have in the factory. So what I'll do is I'll take the 4 outputs, and they already come out balanced. This is a 4-to-4 balancer right here. So they already come out balanced. So I'll just take 2 of the belts and spaghetti them up this way to feed into where the iron and the copper outputs are right here. That way these upper sections don't just run out of resources because they're running critical things. And I'll take the other 2 belts and feed them in here, like where these iron belts are going. I'll be able to remove the ore input right here and just like connect to these copper output. Well, that's not the output, but connect to these copper outputs like this right here to supplement this quote-unquote main bus. Yeah, it's wild. It's spaghetti. So yeah, we could follow the rails down here, and we've got a stone mine, which is also really close to a decent copper source, so I might just belt that. It's a little far, but I might just belt it out of laziness. So we've got a stone mine. I actually completely depleted my previous stone mine right around the time I got this thing online, so it was a lifesaver. And I'm not going to go into all the logic on how these things work, but there's a lot of combinators here that are doing math and stuff. You know, we've got this stone, these stone things on the combinators, which are basically setting up the station as a requester or provider. And I actually do need to update the stone ones for some reasons I'm not going to get too into here. But what ends up happening is if we look at the pole there, I think let's see, where is... Yeah, so green is a provider and red is a requester. So we have a red stone request, not a Minecraft one, but we have a red request for stone and we have a green provider for stone. This provider will only turn on if the chests here have enough stone to actually fill a train. But you're seeing these trains come in and just leave immediately. That's because I used the wrong version of my blueprint, and there's a little bit of an issue with some of the logic here. I actually have a better version. I just need to rip up the combinators and stuff and place down the new blueprint. But I have them all here. I spent a lot of time working on these in the past. I even have them generic, where you could request specific items and stuff, like mixtures of items and all. It gets wild. I put a lot of work into those. But it's basically like my take on a vanilla logistics train network without needing mods or anything, and I kind of prefer it over using the mods. So that's what's kind of driving all my train stuff. We carry the signals on these, on all our train electrical, our train power poles, like these right here, and it drives this whole network. So they'll dispatch and stuff as needed. So yeah, we'll have these set up soon, but basically the trains can go over here and get some copper if they want. I had to set up a new iron mine because the other one's running low, and I didn't really feel like actually attaching it to a train setup because it's a lot of work for one that's already kind of running low. So we got this one going here. And then over here is the last thing I guess I want to talk. Well, there's one more thing, but it's a simple one. We have our smelting arrays. So we have an iron ore drop. We have an iron plate pickup, which again, I'm not actually taking the plates yet, but they're there. All I got to do is get the belts set up in the main factory. So smelting array. I don't have the beacons and stuff, but it doesn't really matter, right? We have this huge smelting array. It can actually fully saturate blue belts, so it's pretty awesome. We have 2 for iron because iron is always bad. We have 1 for copper here. It's not actually being used yet, but it's just a matter of enabling those trains, which I just didn't do yet because I went to bed. And this one is going to be iron plate input to a steel output. This one is going to be a stone input to a stone brick output. And then I'm going to do one up here, probably, I don't know. Yeah, I think this one might be stone tablets. And I'll have to find another place because I want to make one for sand and glass and stuff. So I want to do one for sand, dedicated for sand. Even though I don't know what all sand might be used for, there might not be a reason to, I don't know, we'll find out. I think the good thing about sand is it stacks really high. But then I'll have one for glass as well, where we're like smelting that sand. Can I see a stack of sand? If I can find the pulverizers. I don't think I can. It might stack in 200s though, which would actually be really nice. Because you could transport a lot per train load. But that's another topic for another time. So those are the smelting arrays. Basically, I'm going to add more of these in other places along the map. It's decentralized. It's driven by the train network. So it's very effective in saying, oh, we're not getting enough copper, we're not getting enough iron, let's slap more of those down somewhere. And, I've got this crazy rail blueprint set up for 2 lanes and 4 lanes, and most of them have landfill, and it's all kinds of good stuff here. Makes it really easy to set this stuff up. So the very last thing I wanted to mention is just defenses, because you'll notice I'm not being attacked right now. I have these, we call them laser teeth wall. Made this, I think my friend actually made it when we were streaming this a couple of years ago. But it kind of tiles, as you see here. So basically I can plop this down, and then seems like I missed a couple teeth up there, but I don't really care that much. The teeth make the biters and stuff have to route around them, and it confuses them and gives the lasers more time to attack. So usually biters and stuff, they don't get through those teeth, and they get just zapped by the lasers, and it's a good time. So you can see I'm actually just idling, not even doing anything. I'm pulling 63.5 megawatts toward the lasers only. It's pretty crazy. So if we go back to the map view, you can see there's a wall, there's a wall, there's a wall without lasers yet. I need to go add those. Here's a wall that's not all the way defended. So the red is where the actual turrets are at. If I go down here, you can see these are still ghosts, and then here's the actual turrets that are in place. So if you see the red shade here, that's where the actual turrets are at. And I still need to finish putting the lasers on here. But basically, I've walled myself in. So what I like to do is find bottlenecks. Like next time I expand, I'll want to grab this spot over here where it's kind of bottlenecked a little bit, so I don't have to wall off as much. And I'll probably grab like right here, and then maybe extend that down or something. It allows me to capture more area without walling off as much. I mean, you know, it should be a simple enough concept. Like, really, I should probably expand to here because it lets me keep a lot more, but it's a pain capturing, you know, getting rid of all these biters. You got big nests like this. It's not fun. It's brutal. All right, so... Oh, gotta be careful. I don't want to step on the wrong tracks and get ran over here. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good rundown of what I've got going here. There's so much, it's really hard to break down. What's going to be nice over my next improvements is removing these crappy smelters here, decentralizing it, and feeding in through the trains here. It's going to clean up a lot of this spaghetti here in the middle, and it should give me more throughput, which you see is like a big problem here where I'm not getting enough iron. That's really going to help with that throughput, and I'm excited about that. I also have this core mining drill that I haven't used yet, but I really want to start doing that because when I process the core fragment, I get iron, copper, coal, stone, uranium, crude oil, water, and pyroflux. Pyroflux is the only one I can't use yet, but all the others are actually useful. So I would be really excited to start that up and basically get an infinite stream of resources. And if Hellmod did not lie to me, these 8 pulverizers are what I would need to process all of the ingredients here per second. It says 15 per second expected. And if Hellmod was correct, if I used it correctly, these would be able to process all of that, which pretty cool. Although I think I want to move it. I don't want to do it there. There is one near this iron mine, which I think would be a better place to do it because there's a lot of empty space here. I can build out my filtering and sorting mechanism for all those resources, put down a bajillion tanks for the pyroflux that I can't use, and stack up a bunch of trains to take those resources, and we'll be in good shape. I mean, it may not be all the resources I need, but it'll be good to have that infinite flow of resources. So those are kind of the next ideas, the next steps. Get these smelters turned on so they can supplement my bus, remove a little bit of the spaghetti, get better throughput, start up the core mining. It's going to be a good time. So yeah, that is the current run through of the factory. I don't know when the next time I do this is. I'm working on the cargo rocket silo, which is, I think, all you actually need to go into. Yeah, launch cargo. But you have the space capsule, right? Yeah, you could put the passenger in it. So technically I could start going into space, and you know, there's a lot that can be done there. So I'm really excited about getting into that. We have a little platform here. I want to go rip up a bunch of this free stuff. I'm excited about that. A lot of it's broken, as we can see, but there'll be a lot of free resources. Look at those fast belts that are in perfect shape. Love it. Love it. Like, I can't wait to grab a bunch of this stuff, a free space capsule, but I'll already be up here, so it won't matter. I think there was another thing up here that was appealing. Actually, I don't know where it's at. Maybe it was around, how do I get to the other view? Olga Orbit, maybe. I have no idea where it went. There was a cool ship somewhere up there that I could try to get. Oh, it might be here. Nah, whatever. It's fine. This has gone on long enough. So yeah, maybe the next time I do one of these, I'll be in space. Because I'm basically at that point now. So yeah, looking forward to doing another one of these eventually. Hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, take it easy.